my name is Angela, and this is my brother Richie.
Hi.
And we're starting a new YouTube channel, Fan of Football 813. We're going to go through football teams, the pick of football teams for each week, especially for college football. And now we're going to be starting September 1st. Saturday, September 1st. I can't believe it's September.
The first Saturday in college football this year.
All right, so now, Saturday, September 1st, Oregon State versus Ohio State. Is one of them right?
Ohio State Buckeyes, they're ranked number 5. And they're playing the Oregon State Beavers, who are in the Pac-12. So in terms of conferences, it's a high game because it's the Pac-12 against the Big Ten, 2 Power 5 conferences. That's where it ends. Oregon State is the worst team in the Pac-12. Ohio State is ranked number 5. They're kind of going through some stuff. Their coach is suspended the first 3 games, Urban Meyer. But they have way too much talent. Or I think Ohio State wins.
Ohio State?
Yeah.
Okay. And I will be going for it as well, but my reasoning has nothing to do with anything. I was picking them because they keep talking about them on Glee. Yeah, so I watched Glee and they were talking about them.
She picks her game.
Exactly. See, I would say the way I pick, it has no relevance to really anything. Florida Atlantic versus Oklahoma. So since we're from Florida, well, maybe he doesn't always pick, but I will pick Florida always. So
the Florida Atlantic Owls at Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma's ranked number 7. Florida Atlantic had a very interesting year last year. They won their last 10 games in a row. They won 11 games overall. They had the number 8 offense in the country. They've scored 30 or more points in 11 straight games, if I remember correctly. They have a controversial coach in Lane Kiffin. They very well could upset Oklahoma. Oklahoma is losing their quarterback, who was the number 1 overall pick in this last draft. However, the quarterback they have in, Kyler Murray, if I remember right, he was a transfer from Texas A&M. Their running back ran for 1,000 yards last year. They should be okay. Oklahoma should win. But that's another Oklahoma bet. Shouldn't look past them too much. Florida Atlantic is losing I will say this, they're losing their quarterback, but another one of the best running backs you guys have never heard of last year for Florida Atlantic, Devin Singletary, ran for 1,920 yards. He had 32 rushing touchdowns on the season, which, put it this way, Barry Sanders has the record for 39 rushing touchdowns, an NCAA record. He had 32. So, and nobody knows about him. Well, you know now. Watch out for him.
Which one's that?
For Florida Atlantic, Devin Singletary, running back. They call him Motor Singletary.
All right, so Southern versus TCU. Southern what?
Southern's 1AA. Yeah. TCU is ranked 16th. TCU should have a pretty decent year.
So TCU?
Yeah, I'm going to go with TCU. Okay. They always have the past few years, they've had one of the better offenses nationally. Their coach, Gary Patterson, ever since he's been there since 99 or 2000, and generally they have one of the top defenses nationally. There was a year where they were the number 1 defense for 3 or 4 years in a row. So they won't be that high this year, but usually they are very good all around, and that's why they're ranked 16th. So TCU.
So Texas versus Maryland.
That is Texas Longhorns and the Maryland Terrapins. Texas, they made a bowl last year, but 7 games. Maryland has had terrible luck with their quarterbacks in the last 5 years. Like the first game of the year last year, their quarterback went down, missed the season. The next game, their quarterback, who was the backup, went down, missed the rest of the season. Their third string, if I'm not mistaken, went down later in the year, and they basically had like a linebacker playing quarterback. So, and a few years ago, before the season started, their starting quarterback got hurt right before the season started and in a practice missed the year. The first game, that second string quarterback went down, missed the year. Like 2 weeks later, the first half, the third string quarterback got hurt, missed the year. The quarterback who came in got hurt second half, missed the rest of the year. They went to down their fifth string quarterback. They've had terrible luck
Maryland.
with quarterbacks, with them being staying healthy. That being said, that first game last year, the quarterback who played in that game was awesome, and they killed Texas. That being said, I think the roles reverse this year. Texas will be a better team. Maryland won't. I think Texas wins.
I'll go for Texas. Poor Maryland. Maybe they broke a mirror or something. I don't know. So Kent State versus Illinois.
Kent State Golden Flashes against Illinois Fighting Illini. Kent State is usually one of the worst teams in the country. Illinois is in the Big Ten, but they're usually the worst team in the Big Ten.
Illinois what?
Fighting Illini.
So which one do you think is going to win?
I'm gonna go with Illinois.
Okay.
Illinois does have a pretty good receiver, Mike Dudek, who went through some injuries in his career. I think this is his fifth or sixth year playing because as a freshman a few years ago he had 1,000 yards, was great. He tore his ACL each of the next 2 seasons and did not play at all for 2 years. And last year finally came back. He didn't have a very good year, but their team didn't have a very good year.
So you're going for Illinois.
But yeah.
So I'll go for Illinois. Texas State versus Rutgers.
Texas State Bobcats are not a very good team. They are in the Sun Belt, if I remember right. I believe so, yeah. Rutgers is not a very good Big Ten team.
I think I'm going to go for Rutgers.
There's not much to really say about them.
Yeah, Rutgers, I have a friend actually that works at Rutgers, so I'll kind of go for them. And Scarlet Knights is kind of a cool name. Coastal Carolina versus South Carolina.
So it's the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers.
What the hell is that?
They just moved up to 1A last year. It's
How do you spell that?
CHANTICLEERS.
Oh, what the hell is that?
It's some kind of turkey or hen from like old folklore of some kind.
Chanticleers?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They have one of the coolest looking fields. Their field is aqua color. Anybody that has seen Boise State's blue field, it's like aqua field, Coastal Carolina. It's actually really cool looking.
Coastal Carolina?
Yeah. They have one of the better stories. So their coach, Joe Moglia, although last year he technically didn't coach because he had health issues. However, before 5 years ago, he used to be the CEO for TD Ameritrade and decided he wanted to coach football. He left it, and in those 5 years there, he won 50 games so far. As technically he didn't head coach the games last year. So far in the 5 years prior to that, he won 50 games total. So he averaged like 10 a year. Their offenses were really good in 1AA.
So he went from Ameritrade.
He went from being the CEO
of Ameritrade
to be a head coach.
And he's kicking butt.
Banking money and he's banking wins. South Carolina is a decent SEC school. South Carolina Gamecocks. So actually two birds basically fighting each other.
I'll go for South Carolina as well.
South Carolina's got a pretty good quarterback. I know I spent time on Coastal Carolina. They have a pretty good quarterback, pretty good.
But Coastal Carolina is kind of interesting with the coach history.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
See, this is what I'm talking about. He knows all this history. Like, Ole Miss versus Texas Tech.
It's a kind of a marquee game, although neither one are ranked. Ole Miss, though, they're banned from a bowl this year. But they have a good quarterback in Jordan Ta'amu, who came in last year, the last 5 games, and tore it up. Like he was one of the best, statistically one of the better ones in the country over those last like 5 games. Texas Tech, they have a new quarterback coming in. They passed it around. Anybody that's ever seen Mike Leach, who used to coach there, um, they're usually one of the top 3 in the nation in passing offense every year. In fact, I believe almost every year, pretty much every year since 2001, I think they've been in the top 5 or 10 in passing offense every single season. So,
Who?
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
Um, this is a hard game to pick, actually.
Is it going to be close?
It'll be close. It might be a shootout. Both teams are pretty decent on offense and
So,
not great on
is
defense.
this one you think that would go in overtime?
It could. It very well could.
Do one of us flip a coin?
It literally is. They're about as even
Give a
as
coin?
they're about as even as
Okay.
possible. I'm going to go. I'm gonna go with. See, this is one of the things. I let passing offenses blind me. I love watching passing offenses. Texas Tech, they've been one of my favorite teams to watch since I started watching college football because of the offenses.
And that's been since.
That's at least early, like about 2000 is when I was old enough to really pay attention to it. And
2000.
So my like I want to go for Texas Tech because I enjoy watching them, but I'm gonna have to go with Ole Miss. I'm gonna have to pick Ole Miss.
I will go for Texas Tech, actually.
Yeah.
James Madison versus NC State.
James Madison is a 1AA team, but they're interesting in that at least once or twice over the last few years, the last 10 years, they'll come up and beat a 1A team. I think they beat Virginia Tech, if I'm wrong. And NC State they're expected to be a pretty good ACC team, like a possible contender for the ACC championship.
So if James Madison wins,
and it's the NC State Wolfpack.
NC State Wolfpack. Yeah. So there's another Wolfpack.
Yeah.
So if James Madison wins, it will be an upset.
It'll be an upset, but I'm gonna have to go with NC State. They have a quarterback, Ryan Finley, who's really good. They have I don't know, they got some other players that are pretty good.
And I'm going for James Madison. Villanova versus Temple. So where are those at?
Villanova, actually both are in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Villanova.
Sorry, Philadelphia people.
Villanova's a 1AA team. They're more known for basketball.
Oh, that's how I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the Temple Owls. They did make a bowl game last year. Temple. I think they won 7 games. They're actually kind of expected to be a possible contender in the American Athletic Conference, which is where UCF is with Temple. Houston Cougars and Rice Owls. Houston Cougars should be a pretty decent AAC team. I have to look up. I keep looking at these things. Houston, if I remember right, their quarterback should be okay. Quentin Dormady. Oh, he was a transfer. Okay. So their quarterback is showing Quentin Dormady he's a transfer from Tennessee, from the University of Tennessee. Because their other quarterback who finished last year is De'Aaron King. He's an all-around. He actually he went there and played wide receiver. He was their starting receiver. And then he went over, transitioned to quarterback, and he was a pretty good quarterback. So their offense should be pretty decent.
Who's they?
The Houston Cougars. Okay. Rice is not a good team at all. They have a new coach this year. Over the last 10 years, though, their old coach brought him up. They won 10 games a couple times. For some reason, they felt like he wasn't good enough, which I think is a mistake on their part because Rice wasn't anything before him. But they struggled. They were one of those 4 teams that played this last Saturday against Prairie View A&M. They were losing. They only won on a last-second field goal, 31-28. I don't think they will be in this game. I think Houston wins.
And I'll go for Houston as well. Clemson Tigers against
See,
West Furman.
Scott, fans, any of you, that's what she doesn't know. Because Clemson is the number 2 team in the country, and 2 years ago they beat Alabama for the national championship, and the year before that played Alabama for the national championship.
That's what I don't know. That's
insane. So Furman's 1AA. Clemson should kill them.
Okay.
Clemson, put it this way: they have a quarterback, Kelly Bryant, who played pretty well last year. They made the college football playoffs last year. Going to the season, they recruited the number 1 quarterback in the nation, Trevor Lawrence, and he may start over Kelly Bryant. That's how talented he supposedly is and how talented Clemson is. He probably won't start, at least not the opening weekend. And Kelly Bryant isn't a bad quarterback, but that tells you how well they're recruiting.
Alcorn State versus Georgia Tech.
Alcorn State is 1AA. Georgia Tech is ACC, who might be decent. They're one of those triple option teams that their running offense is usually one of the best. So yeah, I'm going to go with Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech what?
Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets.
Isn't that like a bee? A type of bee? Oh my god, where?
Pause it.
Okay, so we actually paused it for a second because we just received a text that there was, so this is Sunday,
August 26th.
August 26th, and
at 4:46 p.m.
At 4:46 p.m. And we had just received a text that there was another mass shooting in Florida, in Jacksonville, at
a Madden tournament.
So
Madden football, which is kind of coincidental considering we're talking football. It was during a live stream during a Madden tournament. It said there were 4 killed and 10 wounded.
So our hearts go ahead.
Right. So if it seemed weird that we kind of stopped, she's gonna edit this stuff later. It might seem odd. There might be a weird pause. It's because we weren't sure how to handle it. Being recording and getting the information as we're recording.
Right.
So just to let you know, that's what happened.
Yeah, our condolences actually go out to the families and to everyone that was in that tournament, and it's crazy. I hope you guys up in Jacksonville are doing well, and the people at the Madden tournament.
And from there, we're gonna continue picking games because that's what we do. That's what people look for, sports and entertainment. Clearly, it was during a video game tournament. They were doing a video game to try to help cope with different things in life, and they couldn't even escape life from there, which is
really messed up.
Yeah.
UMass versus Boston College.
Yep. So both two Massachusetts teams, UMass Minutemen and the Boston College Eagles. UMass, they're independent. They're not great. They're pretty decent on offense. The quarterback is okay. Boston College has a really good running back who ran for like 1,400 yards last year. So UMass Minutemen, Boston College Eagles. Boston College usually makes bowls. They have a solid team. They usually have a pretty good defense. UMass, their offense gives them a good chance, but I'm gonna go with Boston College. But don't be surprised if UMass sneaks this one out.
You're going for Boston College.
Yeah.
If you have UMass wins, will it be an upset?
A small one, but yeah.
All right, UMass. All right. Stony Brook versus Air Force.
Stony Brook is 1AA. Air Force, they're in the Mountain West. They went 5-7 last year, but normally they make a bowl game. They're a triple option team again, which means their run offense is one of the top in the country. I'm gonna go with Air Force.
Air Force. I'm going to go Air Force as well because of the military. Howard versus Ohio, which is where's Howard at?
Howard is a 1AA team. I'm not sure where they are. Ohio Bobcats. They're in Athens, Ohio. They're a MAC team. They won like I think 10 games last year. They're a good MAC team. So I'm gonna go with Ohio. They got a strong running game. This is kind of a strong overall team.
And,
The offense was actually one of the better ones in the top 10 to 15 nationally last year, I think, in scoring offense.
So I'm going to go for Ohio as well. And for some of these places, sorry if I don't know where they're at.
Yeah.
So in the comments for anyone's we don't know, if you guys know, let us know in the comments.
Austin Peay 1AA team against number 3 Georgia, which they're in Athens, Georgia. The Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh.
They're number 3. They have a good.
Austin Peay versus Georgia.
Yeah, okay. 1AA Georgia should win. Easy.
Washington versus Auburn.
So that's one of the top games of the weekend. Washington Huskies ranked number 9 at Auburn Tigers, ranked number. Actually, Washington Huskies were number 6 and Auburn is number 9.
Auburn what?
Auburn Tigers. Okay. Yeah, Auburn, Alabama, and Washington. They're in Seattle, Washington. Washington Huskies, Jake Browning. 2 years ago, he had 43 touchdown passes. Last year, he only had 19. But their offense is one of the best. Their team is one of the best. Their running back, Myles Gaskin, people sleep on him. He's ran for 1,300 yards for 3 straight years. He's one of the better running backs in the country. Auburn, they should have a solid team. That's a really hard game because that's the kind of game that you very well could see these two play again in the playoffs.
Is this the kind of game that goes in overtime?
Maybe, but it should come down to the end. And like I said, these two teams, they could lose. Either one could, one of them has to lose this game, but they both could end up just going and winning the rest of the games and play each other again for the national championship. Like, it's one of those games.
So which one are you going to go for? Is it one of those hard ones that could be going?
Yeah. I'm going to look, because Auburn's quarterback is escaping me.
So what are the jersey colors?
Jarrett Stidham. Oh, that's right. So Jarrett Stidham is the quarterback for Auburn. He might be top 10 pick next year or something. Auburn is like white and dark blue, like navy blue kind of. And I'm sure Auburn fans, if any are watching, there's probably a certain term for their blue, and Washington is like gold and purplish.
Okay, so I'll be going for Washington.
It's really hard for me to pick. It's at Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
So they got home field advantage.
Auburn does.
Yeah.
Washington, man, their coach is so good.
So if you had to go gut, life or death?
Auburn.
I'm
going to regret that one.
Do you want me to change it? I haven't written it down yet.
I think Auburn. I might kind of root for Washington though, but I will just go Auburn.
Appalachian State versus Penn State.
Appalachian State Mountaineers. They're one of the top teams in the Sun Belt Conference, and Penn State Nittany Lions. They're ranked number 10 in the Big Ten.
Penn State what?
Nittany Lions.
Nittany?
Yeah, Nittany. So Nittany Lions. It's for Mount Nittany up there.
So
this is an interesting game. Appalachian State, for those that have followed, they had one of the biggest upsets in sports history 11 years ago when they were a 1AA team and went into Michigan. Michigan was ranked number 4 in the country and went in there and beat them. at
Appalachian State.
Appalachian when they're a 1AA team.
And they beat Michigan.
They beat number 4 ranked Michigan in Michigan.
See, that's the game I would see.
That was 11 years
Appalachian
ago. That's seen as one of the biggest upsets in sports history, not just college football history, sports history.
Oh, wow.
Um,
So I
and
guess
Appalachian State has a good team.
who is Appalachian State?
Yeah, they are losing their quarterback Taylor Lamb. He was there for 4 years and was very, very solid. But they have a good running back. Ran for 1,000 yards. I think they might have had 2 run for 1,000, but at least one. Penn State, they lost Saquon Barkley, who was their running back to the draft, but they have Trace McSorley back at quarterback, who's a possible Heisman candidate. Penn State should not take them lightly. That being said, I think Penn State will win, but that's another game to watch. Appalachian State might go in there and shock the world again.
So I'm going to go for Appalachian State. So Tennessee versus West Virginia.
Tennessee Volunteers, they're in Knoxville, Tennessee. They play West Virginia Mountaineers. They're in Morgantown. West Virginia is ranked 17th. Tennessee has a new coach. They're in the SEC. Historically, they're a pretty, good school. West Virginia has a good offense. They have Will Greer. He used to be a Gator. He transferred and played last year at West Virginia and was great. Had 34 passing touchdowns, over 3,500 passing yards. They have their receiver. They basically have 3,000-yard receivers. Like 2 went over 1,000. Gary Jennings, 97 catches, 1,000 yards. Their other receiver, he slips my mind, but he led the nation last year with 18 touchdown catches. David Sills, the 5th or 4th or something. He led the nation with 18 touchdown catches. Their third receiver, Marcus Sims. I'm gonna pick West Virginia. I think their offense will be too hard to stop. And we can go with the next one while I look up these stats.
And I'll go for West Virginia as well. West Virginia what?
Mountaineers. So the West Virginia Mountaineers, Marcus Sims had 663 receiving yards still. He was their third receiver, and he had almost 700 yards, which is really good.
Albany versus Pittsburgh.
Albany needs one to play. Pitt Panthers, ACC mediocre. I think Pitt'll win.
Pittsburgh, okay. All right.
They have a decent running back who ran for a few years ago. He stepped in when their starter went down. I think it was Quadri Allison. If I remember right, he ran for 1,000 yards a couple years ago, and he's back now as their starter, so he should be decent.
And I'm going to go for Pittsburgh as well. Marshall versus Miami of Ohio.
Marshall Thundering Herd. They're in the CUSA, I believe, if I remember right. And they're playing Miami of Ohio Redhawks. Well, I'm going to pick Marshall.
Okay. Yeah. So the next one is Central Michigan versus Kentucky.
Central Michigan Chippewas. They're in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And then Kentucky Wildcats are in Lexington, Kentucky. Central Michigan usually has a good team, MAC team, though. They're mediocre to good every year. They'll usually make a bowl. Kentucky's very mediocre SEC. At best, they'll win 7 or 8 games. Like they won 7 last year, I think. But Kentucky should win this one.
Okay, so I'll go for Kentucky as well. Northern Illinois versus Iowa.
So this is interesting. Northern Illinois Huskies, the last 15 years have usually been one of the better teams in the MAC. There have been a couple down years, but generally they'll win 10, 11, 12 games sometimes. They made a big-time bowl game a few years ago. They have a solid quarterback. Iowa is one of the better teams generally in the Big Ten. They'll win. They'll usually at least go to a bowl, but sometimes they'll jump up and win 10, 11. A couple, like 2 or 3 years ago, they went 12-0, almost made the playoffs. They were this close. That one could go either way. I'm going to go with Iowa. Talent-wise, they're probably a little bit better, but Northern Illinois is one of those solid teams that could upset them.
Okay, then I'm going to go for Northern Illinois.
I will say this: Iowa has one of the coolest things. Their stadium is directly next door to a children's cancer hospital, and during game days, the kids will go to one of the top floors. Like they from the top floor, they can see the field from the windows, and they
That
can
is
watch the games. And I think at the end of the first quarter, the entire stadium will turn and wave to all the kids in the hospital.
that is really cool.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome to watch. Like and the stadium has what 50,000 something people, and they turn and wave to the kids there.
At the end of first quarter.
Yeah, I think at some point during the game, I can't remember exactly when, but yeah, everybody does. The players do. Everybody they'll stop. They'll all turn and wave. So it's a really interesting, really cool thing.
That is really cool. I'm starting to get a little teary eyed hearing that. I'm
So
changing it
say
to Iowa. Washington State versus Wyoming.
Washington State Cougars are in the Pac-12 against Wyoming Cowboys, who are a decent Mountain West team. Um, Washington State, they're kind of starting over at quarterback. They have the Mike Leach's. He'll go down as a legend in terms of offense. His offenses, they're always the best in the nation in terms of passing.
And he's with Washington.
He's a Washington State coach. Washington State Cougars, Wyoming Cowboys. I think Washington State will win. They are going into the season with heavy hearts because their quarterback who broke all the Pac-12 records, he went to the NFL, which is good for him. Their backup, who was expected to replace him as the starter in January, he committed suicide. So
God.
uh, they are they're starting over there. They're getting a transfer in Gardner Minshew, who was at East Carolina, and that I'm glad I was reminded of that because East Carolina is a lower, like one of those group of five schools. They're not great, but their offense is pretty much the same as Washington State. So he might come in and light it up immediately. So watch out for that name. If he should be able to. The Mike Leach, those offenses, you can plug a quarterback in. They'll pass for 3,000 yards for about 30 touchdowns pretty easy. He might do that and partially light up the Pac-12. He might go for 4,040 touchdowns. I'm just saying Gardner Minshew is the guy's name. So watch out for him.
And I'm sorry to the team for the quarterback that committed suicide.
Tyler Helinski was his name.
Tyler Helinski. Sorry about Tyler Helinski. UNLV versus USC.
You know, UNLV, Nevada, Las Vegas Rebels against USC Trojans, Southern California. USC is ranked 15th. UNLV, they're not a very good Mountain West team. They've gotten a little bit better. They might make a bowl, but I think USC should win.
I think I'll go for USC. North Carolina versus California.
So North Carolina Tar Heels, they're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and California Golden Bears, they're in Berkeley, California. All right, so North Carolina and Cal, they played last year if I remember right, and it was a pretty exciting game. North Carolina went 3-9. They probably will make a bowl. Cal has a solid team. I am going to go with Cal.
And I will too.
I'm going to go back a second. Cal's quarterback is Ross Bowers. He's a good quarterback. Although they had a transfer in, McElwain from South Carolina, but Cal should be pretty decent.
All right, UT Martin versus Missouri.
UT Martin is 1AA. Missouri Tigers is in the SEC. I'm going to go with they have Drew Lock, one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I think Missouri wins.
Missouri.
One thing I want to say about Missouri, their offensive coordinator went to UCF to become their head coach. So the new offensive coordinator in Missouri is a guy who sucks as a head coach. and I'm not. I think I want to say this on record.
On record, guys.
Missouri. So Derek Dooley, he used to be the head coach at Louisiana Tech and at Tennessee. He wants to. Missouri led the SEC with Drew Lock had 44 touchdown passes in the SEC, led the nation, and now they want to change the offense to a pro style offense because Drew Lock wants to play in the NFL. Great for him. He might be good. Derek Dooley is a bad coach. This is a mistake, Missouri. You're making a mistake. You're not going to go to a bowl with him.
But why?
Because their offense, they want to scale it back. Their offense is what got them to 7 games.
Oh, so why are they fixing what's not broken?
Exactly. Missouri, you are in the best conference in the country. You had one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He had 44 touchdown passes against the best competition, and you still only won 7 games with that. And you're gonna change your offense. You're not making a bowl this year. If you do, it'll be because your defense does well. Maybe you sneak out games. It won't be because of your offense. Bad move, Missouri. I'm saying they might still make a bowl, but it won't be because of that offense. He's not throwing. He won't. If he throws more than 25 touchdown passes this year, I will be shocked.
Who's he?
Drew Lock, the quarterback for Missouri. Next game, Eastern Illinois
versus Arkansas. Eastern Illinois versus Arkansas.
Arkansas Razorbacks. Eastern Illinois is a 1AA team. Arkansas should win. They have a new head coach. He went there. He was the head coach for the last 2 or 3 years at Southern Methodist. Before that, he was the coordinator at Clemson. He's actually a really good coordinator. Maybe not this year, but he might have Arkansas pretty good. So Arkansas wins.
You going for Arkansas?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go for Arkansas as well. So, Boise State versus Troy.
Boise State Broncos from Idaho ranked 22nd at Troy Trojans. They're now Troy, Alabama. By the way, Troy, Alabama.
Oh.
By the way, Arkansas is in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And Missouri is in Columbia, Missouri. This is interesting. Troy won 10 games last year and beat LSU, which was a big shocker. At LSU. You don't beat LSU at LSU, especially Troy being in the Sun Belt. They're one of the worst conferences, but Troy's been one of the better teams. They won 10 games. Boise State, they're one of the best teams in the group of 5. They should be in a big conference by now.
So Boise.
Those Power 5 conferences, Pac-12, I'm looking at you. You're missing. You should have put Boise State in there 10 years ago. Put it this way, Boise State, since the year 2000, the number 1 scoring offense in the country. They've scored more points than everybody. And if they were to go undefeated, they'd be left out of those playoffs.
That's
Mm-hmm.
Heard some truth.
Boise State, Brett Ripien, really good quarterback. Brett Ripien, the last 2 years, he's been really one of the best, statistically, one of the best quarterbacks in the Mountain West, one of the better ones statistically at Boise State, which is saying a lot because Boise State has had some incredible quarterbacks in their history. I think they barely beat Troy last year. They only won 24-13 last year. It was a close one. And it's in Troy, but I don't usually go against Boise State, so I gotta go Boise State.
I will go with Boise State. The reason why I'm gonna go with Boise State is because of it. They seem cool, but I think they're the ones with the blue field, right?
Yep.
The blue field.
They got that blue field.
They got that blue field, so go Boise State. Old Dominion versus Liberty.
Old Dominion Monarchs. They are in Virginia. They are in
because of the Virginia Monarchs.
Yeah, probably. I'm trying to think of the town they're in. Norfolk.
Norfolk. Oh.
It's spelled Norfolk. I used to say Norfolk, but my friend is from Virginia, Corey, and it's pronounced Norfolk. Old Dominion Monarchs last year went 5-7. Year before, won 10 games. They're pretty decent. But and they're playing the Liberty Flames, which is might be an interesting team because they're also in Virginia. They're in Lynchburg. Liberty though they're transitioning from 1AA to 1A this year, but last year they beat Baylor, who's a Big 12 team. They have one of the better offenses in the country. They have a quarterback, Steven Buckshot Calvert is his name, and he's really good. They have a 1,000-yard receiver. Um, Liberty could come in and beat Old Dominion, and I'm actually gonna go with Liberty. Transitional team. This is a mini upset, I think, but I'm going with Liberty.
I'll go for Liberty too.
The Liberty Flames.
Liberty Flames. Fordham versus Charlotte.
Fordham's a 1AA team. It's the Charlotte 49ers. They are not a good team at all. They're terrible. Fordham could very well win this. But there's not much to say. They have a quarterback, Hassan Klug, who's a decent dual threat. He
Who
can
is
run
that?
the Charlotte. They're not good, but I think they win this game.
So Charlotte.
It might be a close one, but yeah, Charlotte.
Can go for Charlotte as well. North Carolina AT&T versus East Carolina.
A&T.
It says AT&T there.
It's A&T.
Oh, my bad.
The North Carolina phone company.
I thought that's what it said. Okay, North Carolina A&T.
Yeah, against East Carolina Pirates. They're in, I think, Greenville, North Carolina. ECU, they're purple. They're not great. Their offense is okay. I go with ECU. There's not a ton to say about them.
ECU, okay. And I'll go for ECU. Okay. So Elon versus South Florida. So I'm gonna go for South Florida.
Yeah, the USF Bulls. They lost.
Woo.
They lost Quentin Flowers, at quarterback, who he went to the draft. He's one of the best to ever play at USF, and one of the best to ever play, kind of in the conference that they're in.
So we're in Tampa. So
Yeah.
at least I'm gonna go for
They're
USF.
starting over quarterback. We're not. It might be Blake Bennett, who's a transfer. That they could. Well, I mean, in the future when we pick games, we'll talk more about USF, but they should win this one against Elon pretty easily. Elon's a 1AA team, so
So which one are you going for?
yeah, USF.
Yeah, okay. Yes. All right. Richmond versus Virginia.
Which is funny because the Richmond Spiders. That's one of the 1AA teams that I actually know of. And they're usually a good one. They're usually a really good 1AA team. Like they're up for national championships sometimes, and they're in Richmond, Virginia, and the Virginia Cavaliers are in Charlottesville. The Cavaliers, they actually made a bowl last year. They lost their quarterback, but I'm gonna go with Virginia with this one.
Virginia Cavaliers.
Yeah.
So Delaware State versus Buffalo.
Obviously, it's 1AA Buffalo Bulls. They're MAC. They actually have a tall, big quarterback. He's 6'7" quarterback, and they might be they might make a bowl. They went 6-6 last year, but didn't get selected for a bowl.
It's Buffalo what?
Buffalo Bulls, and they actually have one of the best receivers statistically in the nation. Their quarterback is Tyree Jackson, and the receiver.
So Delaware State versus Buffalo, which.
So I'm gonna go with Buffalo. I'm Anthony Johnson. He's the receiver for the Buffalo Bulls. Last year he had like 1,400 receiving yards. He was one of the best in the nation last year. So just watch out for him. He should go. He should be a Biletnikoff finalist, which goes to the top receiver. All right.
South Carolina State versus Georgia Southern.
South Carolina State's a 1AA team. Georgia Southern Eagles. They're in Statesboro, Georgia. Um, Georgia Southern, they did not have a good year last year, but generally they moved up from 1AA a few years ago and had good years. They're usually one of the better running teams in the nation. Um, they could very well turn around this year and make a bowl at least, if not go for the Sun Belt Championship. So I'm going to go with Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, by the way, they're like the Alabama of 1AA. They in Georgia Southern in one AA, they started playing for national championships in 1978, and they won like 5 or something, and they played for like 10 or whatever. Like they used to be great.
Grambling versus Louisiana.
Grambling is one AA, and Louisiana, they are the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns. uh, Usually it's weird. They made bowls, and then last year they got rid of their coach, and so this year it's like a new coach, but he was Billy Napier. He was a coordinator, offensive coordinator at I believe Arizona State. Who's one had they've usually been known for offenses at Arizona State, so they might have a pretty decent year. But I'm gonna go with Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns.
I will too. So VMI versus Toledo.
So VMI is Virginia Military Institute, but they are 1AA. Toledo Rockets, last year, great year, one of the best in the country. Although they're in the MAC, they usually have one of the better offenses. They lost their quarterback, Logan Woodside. He was there 4 years, but they should be pretty solid and have a really good year. They should be one of Toledo. They'll win. Toledo has one of the most interesting wide receiving cores in the country because um, they 2 years ago they had a receiver he had over 1,200 receiving yards. Last year he got hurt and another guy came in had over 1,200 receiving yards, and there's a third one I think had over 1,000 or close to 1,000. Each of those three over the last 2 years have had at least 10 touchdown receptions within each of the seasons. So if that makes sense. So 2 years ago, one of them had 10 touchdown catches at least. Then last year, the other two, each of them had 10 touchdown catches. And they're all back this year. And that's the first team in NCAA history to have 3 separate receivers that have each had a season with at least 10 touchdown receptions each. I know it's kind of a big stat. It's very like narrow, but basically they have one of the top wide receiving cores in the entire nation.
But wait, what does VMI mean again?
Virginia Military Institute.
It's a military school?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'm going for a VMI. Well, because it's a military school. So, Southeast Missouri State versus Arkansas State. No, wait. Yeah, sorry.
Southeast Missouri State, 1AA. Arkansas State, one of the best Sun Belt schools. They have Justice Hanson at quarterback, who was at Oklahoma actually. He was an Oklahoma recruit. He transferred there last year, threw for almost 4,000 yards, 37 touchdown passes. They're going to be great this year offensively. They'll win easy.
Southeast Missouri State versus Arkansas.
Arkansas State Red Wolves, and then they were in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
Mercer versus Memphis.
Mercer, 1AA, Memphis Tigers, one of the better teams in the American Athletic Conference. They might go. They lost their quarterback, but they have a really good running back and a pretty good receiver. They should win.
Central Arkansas versus Tulsa.
Central Arkansas, 1AA team, but they have a cool field. They have a purple field.
Ooh.
But
nice.
1AA, and they're playing who?
Tulsa.
Tulsa Golden Hurricane. They're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They usually have a pretty solid offense. I'm going to go with Tulsa.
And I'm going to go with the one with the purple field. Because that's cool. Louisiana Tech versus South Alabama.
Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. They're in Reston, Louisiana. They usually have a pretty good offense. The South Alabama Jaguars are in Mobile, Alabama. Um, if I remember right, they made a bowl, they made a bowl at least once or twice in the last few years, even though they didn't even have a football program till 2010, I think, or some around there. But I'm gonna go with not USA, Louisiana Tech.
You're gonna go.
Louisiana Tech.
Oh, okay. And I'll go with, I guess, South Alabama because it's in Mobile.
Yeah.
So I'll go South
I'm
Alabama.
gonna go Louisiana Tech quarterback. I should know it. Jamar Smith. Yeah, he's a really good quarterback for Louisiana Tech.
What are they?
Bulldogs.
Jackson State versus Southern Mississippi.
Jackson State, 1AA, Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles. They're in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. They usually have a pretty decent team. I think they went to a bowl last year. I keep looking up these players. I'm forgetting them.
Pressure's on.
Yeah. As soon as I see it, I'll tell you about him. But Quadro Griggs, he's a solid. He split time last year. Okay, so So Southern Mississippi, they had two quarterbacks last year, and they split time. Keon Howard and Quadra Griggs, and they both played really well. But Keon Howard transferred, so it is Quadra's job, and expect him to have a nice season.
So Jackson State versus Southern Miss.
So Southern Miss Golden Eagles, I'm gonna go with them.
Cincinnati versus UCLA.
So the Cincinnati Bearcats against the UCLA Bruins. Cincinnati is in Cincinnati, Ohio. UCLA is LA. UCLA is starting over at quarterback. Josh Rosen was the number 10 overall pick. He was overrated, by the way.
So who was overrated?
Josh Rosen, who was the 10th overall selection in this past year's draft. He will not. I'm not going to say he's not going to be good because he's actually in an offense that fits him perfectly with the Arizona Cardinals. So he may do well with them because of the offense, not because he's good, because he sucks.
Another truth being spoken. I'm going by what he's saying.
But that has nothing to do with this year. Cincinnati Bearcats sucked last year as well. Their quarterback, Hayden Moore, he's decent, but I still got to go UCLA.
So Indiana versus Florida International. So I will be going with Florida International.
Florida International, they're in the CUSA, but they won 8 games last year. They had a new coach last year as well, Butch Davis, who he resurrected the University of Miami in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was at North Carolina for a few years and he kind of turned them around as well, made them a bowl team. In his first year, Florida International, he won 8 games. They made a bowl. They could very well beat Indiana. Indiana should have a decent offense. They're in the Big Ten, though. Florida International, though, lost their starting quarterback. I'm gonna have to go with Indiana.
Ooh.
Florida International could win, so don't be surprised if they pull it out.
So I'm writing down Indiana.
Yeah.
Nicholls versus Kansas.
Nicholls is a 1AA team. Kansas Jayhawks. They are in Lawrence, Kansas. They are terrible, but they are in the Big 12. But they are basically the worst team in the country, or one of the worst teams over the last almost 10 years now. Since they fired Mark Mangino for no reason. Stupid Kansas. They've been horrible. Horrible.
So because they fired a coach that did well?
He brought them to bowl games.
Again, why do you teams keep fixed?
He brought them to a 12-win season in 2007, 8, somewhere around there. But then 2 years later, they went 5-7, and they're like, no, we can do better. and I don't think they won more than 3 games since in any season. They did not go 0-12 last year. They won, I think, 1 or 2.
So does Nichols have a chance of beating them?
Slight, I still might. I still should go with Kansas. It might be their only win this year, though. I'm not even joking. They'll start out 1-0, and they'll be like, "Hey, it's good. It's nice to feel good here in Kansas." And then they'll wait till basketball season because that's where they win.
Kansas does better in basketball.
They won a bunch of
Okay.
championships.
I know
Rock
the
Chalk Jayhawk.
Rock Chalk. What's
Rock Chalk. That's their war cry. Rock Chalk Jayhawk
for football team?
for their school. That's
Oh,
what they
oh,
call
oh,
it.
oh.
That's what they say.
So I know the most about football, and even that's not much. So I will go for. I'm gonna go for Nichols just to. I don't know, just for the hell of
Nichols
it.
wins.
No,
If
Nichols
Nichols
wins.
wins, Kansas, I'm sorry, you're not winning this year.
Yeah. So I'll go for. I am sorry, but I don't know where Nichols is at.
I think they're in Louisiana.
Louisiana. So
I'll look it up.
then Nichols is in Louisiana. So I'm gonna go for Nichols. So the next one, Michigan versus Notre Dame. You think that
I'm
might
pretty
be
sure College Game Day will be there
okay?
this weekend
Michigan versus Notre Dame. Why do you think College Game Day will be there?
because it's number 14 Michigan Wolverines at number 12 Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and 2 historically, Michigan has more wins than any team in NCAA history as a school, and Notre Dame has a bunch of championships.
Here's a little thing for Notre Dame. I would actually go for Notre Dame mainly because of it's a Catholic school, right? It's a Catholic school, and we're Catholic, so I would actually go for Notre Dame because of that. But I actually don't like that they think they're better than everyone else. And the other teams let them be better. You guys actually let them be better by allowing them to play them. Like if they don't want to play in your conferences or be grouped together with everyone else, then why play them? Like
Yes, College Game Day will be in South Bend, Indiana for that game.
College Game Day, South Bend, Indiana.
Yep, Notre Dame is in South Bend, Indiana. Michigan is in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
And so for Notre Dame versus Michigan,
Oh,
for me it's morale versus something else. So which one are you going to go for?
All right, so Michigan is interesting. Last season, they lost 9 starters in their defense and still had, I believe, the number 1 or like one of the top 5 defenses in the country. This year, they have the past few years under Jim Harbaugh, they haven't had a quarterback. This year, they got Shea Patterson. He's a transfer in from Ole Miss. Last year at Ole Miss, he was phenomenal and was one of the best statistically, but only played 7 games because he got hurt and he transferred out to Michigan. He's going to start. Notre Dame, their quarterback, either Brandon Wimbush or Ian Book, they're okay. They're good talent. They're not great at passing, but they're good kind of overall. They have a good team. This will be a really close. I think Michigan wins. I think their defense wins, and they have the better quarterback.
And is it true, Notre Dame, the fact that they're outside?
Notre Dame, so she doesn't like the fact that Notre Dame is considered an independent, but the NCAA keeps giving them these special privileges in terms of being allowed to play in tier high profile bowl games or to get into the playoffs. They kind of give them leeway that they don't give other teams, and
Other teams
the
that
other
are
teams that are in conferences.
yeah. So if you're outside of the conference, you're outside
So
of the
she
conference.
thinks it's hypocritical and unfair, and I agree. Notre Dame should not be allowed into playoffs ever until they get into a conference.
I agree with that. Any of the independent.
Yeah, I agree. Any of the independents, be fair to there's 6 of them. If you want into the playoffs, you go to a conference.
I agree.
Otherwise, you shouldn't get any special. If you're gonna give a privilege to Notre Dame, then you give it to the other independent teams.
So they're not even giving it to the other
No, it's just because it's Notre Dame. It's because they have a history and they're kind of grandfathered in. Fuck you, Notre Dame.
I don't know if I'm going that far, but as far as I do think it's hypocritical. So I'm gonna have to go with Michigan. South Dakota versus Kansas State.
Kansas State Wildcats. They're in Manhattan, Kansas, known as the Little Apple, because Manhattan, or because the Big Apple is in New York, so they call them the Little Apple.
Where's this at?
Manhattan, Kansas.
Oh, okay. I like that actually. It's pretty interesting.
Kansas State.
What about South Dakota?
South Dakota is a one AA team. Kansas State is one of those teams. Every 4 years, they'll jump up, win 11 games out of nowhere. And I think that might be them again this year. Their quarterback, because they have a decent running game. The quarterback, Alex Delton and Skylar Thompson, they kind of go back and forth, but they should be solid. Bill Snyder, who's like the Gandalf of college football. He's one of these stories of college football. Before him, Kansas State was terrible. Was a terrible team, and he brought them up. They make bowls all the time. Every now and then they'll be this close for a national championship. There have been multiple times where they'd be like in the top four, and if there was a college football playoff, even with the shit college football playoff we have now, where you go the top four, they would have made at least one or two of them.
And this is with Kansas State.
Kansas
right?
State, yep, all with them.
So South Dakota versus Kansas State. Which one are you going for?
Kansas State.
Okay, I figured that just. So I will go with Kansas State as well. I don't know where that came from. As well. Okay. Huh?
Edit that out.
Yeah. Stephen F. Austin versus Mississippi State.
Stephen F. Austin is one AA. Mississippi State, pretty good SEC school. They have a new coach, Joe Moorhead, who's been at Penn State. He's been their offensive coordinator for a while. They have a good Nick Fitzgerald, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country that most of y'all don't know about. He ran for 1,000 whatever yards last year, although he got hurt later. They should win this though.
Mississippi State.
Yeah. But Nick Fitzgerald, I'm gonna look up the stats just to make sure, because he is a really, really good dual threat, which means he can pass and run.
And I will go for Mississippi State as well. What is their mascot?
Mississippi State Bulldogs. They're in Starkville, Mississippi. They call it Stark Vegas.
Stark Vegas?
Yep.
Stark Vegas.
So put it this way. So 2 years ago, Nick Fitzgerald threw for 2,423 yards, 21 touchdowns and 10 picks, and ran for 1,375 yards and 16 touchdowns. That's a quarterback in the SEC. Last year he got hurt near the end of the season. He passed for 1,782, 15 touchdowns, 11, which isn't great, but still ran for 984 yards and 14 touchdowns. Pentelman for 1,000 yards rushing, maybe. Good 2,500 yards passing. Watch out for him. Fringe Heisman candidate, I doubt it, but if they were to have some kind of great year, who knows?
Charleston Southern versus Florida. So versus the Gators.
Yeah, Charleston Southern, Winnebago, the Gators. And head coach Dan Mullen, he was actually the Mississippi State coach for the last 8 or 9 years. He turned them around, made them really good, made them one of the really good offenses. He used to be offensive coordinator at Florida under Urban Meyer back in the Tebow days. So a lot is expected from Dan Mullen to turn around our offense. Our offense has been dreadful since Tebow left for 8 years now.
And when he says our, he means Gators.
I say our because I'm a Gator fan.
He's a Gator fan.
So they should win this first game.
And I'll go for the Gators as well, because it means the Florida's team, and I also like the Gators. Middle Tennessee versus Vanderbilt.
Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. They are in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is actually in Murfreesboro. There's I don't know if there's a statue or something, but Murfreesboro is the dead geological geographical center of the state of Tennessee. So that's why they're called Middle Tennessee State. They're playing Vanderbilt Commodores, a SEC school who's not great. They're in Nashville, Tennessee. Middle Tennessee, I think, made a bowl game the last couple of years. They have a really good offense. Their quarterback, although he was hurt last year, he's one of the better ones. Um, I'm trying to think of his name too, because he's actually the coach's son um, for Middle Tennessee State. But he did not start because he's the coach's son, because he's actually good. Brent Stockstill. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the group of five. They could very well beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's they're usually the worst team in the SEC. Every now and then they'll go to a bowl.
Middle Tennessee?
Vanderbilt.
Oh, okay.
Um, I'm gonna go with Middle Tennessee State. I'm gonna go with an upset.
So Middle Tennessee to be upset?
It probably will be.
Okay, then I'm going for Middle Tennessee too.
I haven't looked at any Vegas lines.
SMU versus North Texas.
Southern Methodist University Mustangs against North Texas Mean Green. North Texas is in Denton, Texas, and Southern Methodist is in, I want to say, in Dallas. But I'm going to check. It might be kind of even. Southern Methodist has been good on offense last few years, but yeah, they're in Dallas. But their coach, they have a new coach. North Texas has been usually not great, but the last couple of years they actually made bowl games and have a really good quarter. They got Mason Fine at quarterback, who passed for like 3,000 something yards and 30 something touchdowns last year. It's actually an even game. I'm gonna go with North Texas. North Texas, Mean Green.
I think I will go for North Texas as well. Okay, Northern Arizona versus UTEP.
Northern Arizona is 1AA. UTEP is Texas El Paso Miners. They actually went 0-12 last season. They have a new coach. Northern Arizona, if I remember right, they're usually pretty decent 1AA. They could actually win this game, but I have a hard time picking a 1AA team. So I'm gonna go UTEP. I'm probably gonna be wrong about this one.
So I'm going to pick Northern Arizona because it does not bother me. Going for the lower team. So Louisville versus Alabama.
Louisville Cardinals from Louisville, Kentucky at Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Alabama's coming in the number one team. Louisville they lost Lamar Jackson, who is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He won the Heisman 2 years ago, and last year had an awesome year. They're losing him. Louisville probably will make a bowl this year. They'll probably be okay, but I think Alabama wins. It's based on schools in the past couple of years. If Lamar Jackson had returned for a senior year, that would be a humongous game. But he's gone. Louisville is not ranked. Alabama's number one. I'd say Alabama.
I'll go for Alabama as well. Bowling Green versus Oregon.
Bowling Green Falcons. Usually a pretty good offense. All the last couple of years, they haven't been very good overall. Oregon Ducks. They revolutionized the sport with their blur offense. They call it a blur because they run the 2-minute drill all game. So they go really fast. They got a new coach, Mario Cristobal, but they have one of the best quarterbacks that most people don't know, Justin Herbert. Put it this way: the first 5 or 6 games Justin Herbert played last year. Oregon averaged 52 points a game. He got hurt. They fell to averaging 15 points a game. He's back this year. They are losing one of the best running backs in Oregon in history, but and actually I didn't realize this. I think if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time Oregon's ever played a MAC school, which is Bowling Green, which is kind of weird, but this is a little tidbit info. But I'm gonna go with Oregon. Oregon's ranked 24th, I think, or something.
I will go with Oregon.
Oh, yeah, we're almost done.
Yep. So Akron or Akron?
Akron.
Akron versus Nebraska.
Akron Zips. They're in Akron, Ohio, against Nebraska Cornhuskers and Lincoln. They have a new head coach, Scott Frost, who was the head coach at UCF last year and led UCF to that undefeated season.
Oh, so UCF, the coach of UCF went to Nebraska?
Mhm.
Why did UCF let him go?
It was money. Nebraska offered him more money.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nebraska guys, watch out in the future. Scott Ross is going to bring them to a national championship while he's there, I believe. Not this year. I think they might make. They'll probably make a bowl this year. I think they win this game against Akron. Akron's not great. Nebraska has some solid pieces. I think they'll be fine. They weren't very good last year, but they didn't make a bowl. But usually they're pretty good. Scott Frost is a really really good coach, and Akron is not a very good team. I take that back. Nebraska did make not Nebraska. Akron made a bowl last year. I think they went 7-7. They technically won their division in the MAC. They played for the MAC championship. So I should say they're not very good, but I don't see them being able to beat Nebraska.
So you're going for Nebraska?
I think Nebraska wins.
And so if Akron wins, it's going to be an upset.
Yeah, it'll be a small one, but
small one is better than no. So I'm going to go for Akron. So my stats are probably going to be whatever. All right, Abilene Christian versus Baylor.
Abilene is a Winnipeg school. Baylor Bears in Waco, Texas. They won one game last year because they used to be good. Historically, used to be bad, and then Art Briles went there about 10 years ago. He turned them into one of the best offenses every year. Robert Griffin III he won a Heisman there, which nobody would ever won a Heisman at Baylor. Then there were some scandals the last couple of years. They fired the coach. They had a new coach last year. He had to basically retool the entire team. I think they only won one game, I think, last year. I think they will win more this year. I think they win this game. So I'm going to go with Baylor.
Baylor? I will go with Baylor as well. South Dakota State versus Iowa State.
South Dakota State's won AA. Iowa State Cyclones are in Ames, Iowa. They actually won 8 games last year, and they have a good quarterback. I think in Kyle Kempt, if I remember his name right. Their coach is an up-and-coming coach. They should have a pretty solid year. They have a really good running back. I think it's David Montgomery, if I remember right, over 1,000 yards last year. They'll win this game. So Iowa State.
I will go with Iowa as well. Incarnate Word versus New Mexico.
Incarnate Word is a 1AA New Mexico Lobos. They're a triple option team, Mountain West. They did not have a good year last year. They're coming in with a lot of distractions. Their coach is, I guess he made some stupid remarks or something, but I think they should still win this game.
New Mexico.
Yeah.
Lobos?
Lobos, yes. They're in Albuquerque.
Idaho versus Fresno State.
Idaho Vandals are in Moscow, Idaho. They actually, so Idaho was 1A. This year they dropped down to 1AA. Even though I think they made a bowl last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember, but and they're playing Fresno State. Fresno State had a turnaround. 2 years ago they won like 2 games. Last year their new head coach, quote unquote, Jeff Tedford, he used to be the Cal head coach in the mid 2000s. He turned the Cal team around and made them perennial bowls. Fresno State, his first year, he brought them to 10 wins. He won their division in the Mountain West Conference and made a bowl game. So Fresno State will be a really good Mountain West team, and they'll win this game.
Fresno State and
Fresno State Bulldogs. They're in Fresno, California.
Bulldogs. All right, UTSA versus Arizona State.
It's Texas San Antonio Roadrunners, and they're in San Antonio, and they're playing Arizona State Sun Devils. They're in Tempe, Arizona. Arizona State has a new head coach, Herm Edwards, who he was the head coach for the New York Jets like 10 years ago. This is a weird move because he's never been a head coach in college. He hasn't even coached as an assistant in college in 20 or 30 years. That being said, Arizona State, their offense should be pretty good. They have Manny Wilkins back at quarterback. He had over 3,000 yards. UTSA is an interesting team. That I think they made a bowl last couple years. But I think Arizona State wins.
Arizona State. So I like the Roadrunners. So whenever I hear Roadrunner, I think Roadrunner and Coyote.
Yeah.
You guys,
Meep, meep.
yeah, I thank you, Warner Brothers, for that. Roadrunner and Coyote. Anyway, so Roadrunner and Sun Devils. What do the jerseys look like?
Arizona is yellow and like a reddish. And UTSA, they're like a black and something. Let me look.
Which one were you going for again?
Arizona State. I'm showing her jerseys.
All right, so I guess we'll go for UTSA based on the jersey.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arizona. BYU versus Arizona. And don't tell me, Brigham Young University. Yes!
Brigham Young Cougars. They are in Provo, Utah, against the Arizona Wildcats. They are in Tucson, Arizona. So this is an interesting game. BYU wasn't very good last year, but usually are pretty deep, at least bowl worthy. Arizona generally has a pretty good offense. Arizona has the Heisman candidate of all Heisman candidates at quarterback, though. They have a guy named Khalil Tate. And I will pull up, because I'm pulling up these stats because they are worthy of being mentioned. He almost
Honorable mentions.
No, not honorable. He'll be the front runner going in
Front
because
runner
of what he
mentions.
did in like 6 games last year.
So front runner mentions. Yes?
Yeah, Khalil Tate. He played in technically 11, but he started the last like 7 games or so. In those 7 games, he passed for 1,591 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 9 picks, which it's fine. What he did was, in those 7 games, ran for 1,411 yards and 12 touchdowns. His first game as a starter, he set. I'm gonna try to pull this up for the game because his first game as a starter. He set the NCAA record for rushing yards by a quarterback with 327 rushing yards in one game. The next week, he ran for 230. He ran for 137, 146, 161, and 206. He did all of that in 6 straight games. He basically only started about half the season.
And this was Khalil Tate?
Khalil Tate, Arizona Wildcat quarterback. They have a new head coach, Kevin Sumlin, who was at Texas A&M for about 10 years. He knows offense. If Khalil Tate's not there at the Heisman ceremony at the end of the year, then he must have gotten hurt because that's about the only way you're going to stop him.
So you're going to go for Arizona?
Yep, Arizona.
Navy versus Hawaii. I'm going to go for Navy. And
so it's the Navy midshipmen. They're in Annapolis. Annapolis, Maryland, against at Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. They're in Honolulu, Hawaii. This will be interesting. This is kind of Navy every year is one of the top in the country. They're a triple option team. They're an American Athletic. Usually Even before they joined the American Athletic, they were always a bowl team. Usually they'll win like 9. They might win 10 games this year. They're usually one of the better teams. Hawaii, back in the mid 2000s, Hawaii was one of the best offenses in the country. They had what they called a run and shoot offense with passing. There was like number one in passing. This year they're going back to that run and shoot. And one of those 4 promo games last week where they beat Colorado State, their first game starting quarterback, Cole McDonald, his first game ever as a starting quarterback in college. He threw for 418 yards and 3 touchdowns and ran for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this is like the two diametrically whatever like the two most opposite offenses playing each other. One that runs every down, one that passes every down. After watching Hawaii, going into here, I would have picked Navy. After seeing Hawaii, I gotta go with Hawaii. Also, travel. Navy is traveling from Maryland to Hawaii. That's what, about 5,000 whatever miles or so.
So now, that ends Saturday, September 1st. So now there is one game on Sunday, September 2nd, and it's Miami versus LSU. I'm gonna go for Miami.
This is one of the marquee games of the weekend. Miami Hurricanes they're actually technically in Coral Gables. They're not in Miami.
Yeah, I know.
At number 8 Miami, at number 25, or not at. It's a neutral site game being played in Texas. But it's against number 25 LSU, Louisiana State Tigers. It'll be a good game. Malik Rosier, he's the quarterback for Miami. He had over 3,000 yards last year, 26 touchdowns to 14 picks. The 14 picks is kind of high. They have really good receivers. They have a good running back, Travis Homer. They have the turnover chain gang. Their defense was one of the top. If I don't know if they led the country, but they were one of the top teams in the country in forcing turnovers. LSU, they, if I remember right, they had somebody transfer in as quarterback. Usually they're one of the best defenses, one of the most talented teams. Just overall, like recruiting wise, they're always top 5, top 10 nationally in recruiting. It'll be put it this way. Joe Burrow. Okay, so the quarterback for LSU, he's a transfer. He transferred in from Ohio State, which is actually good for them. But he didn't play a lot for Ohio State, but he's still better talent than everything they had. Here's an interesting matchup to watch. Over the past a long time, LSU has been known for their secondary. Their cornerbacks and their safeties have either won the Thorpe Award often or been up for it. They have a cornerback. His name is actually Greedy Williams. I think that's his nickname. I can't remember his true name, but he goes by Greedy Williams. I don't think he was a true freshman, but as a freshman last year, he had 6 interceptions, which is one of the tops in the country. And it's going against a quarterback who threw 14 picks, and that's not good. So that'll be an interesting matchup to see a quarterback who might be shaky throwing interceptions against a player and a defense that can intercept the ball.
Miami.
LSU can intercept the ball. Miami's quarterback throws a little too many interceptions.
Okay.
So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch. I'm gonna go with Miami. I think overall they're better. I think Malik Rosier quarterback is still a good quarterback, especially compared to LSU. Joe Burrow could come in and play lights out, but we haven't actually seen him really play. He might have played a little as a backup at Ohio State, but not really. I think overall Miami is a little bit better.
As long as they don't throw interceptions.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. As long
Okay.
if he doesn't, I'll say this: if Malik Rosier doesn't throw an interception, they will win. Even if he doesn't throw a touchdown, if I think their running game will be good enough, their defense will be good enough. It if he doesn't turn it over, they'll win.
September 3rd is Labor Day, and there's a game that day. So, okay.
It's one of the top matchups of the weekend.
Top matchup is Virginia Tech versus Florida State. Of course, like I keep mentioning, I will be going for Florida State because of the Florida team. But this one here,
So it's the Virginia Tech Hokies. They're from Blacksburg, Virginia. They're playing Florida State Seminoles. They're from Tallahassee, Florida. I do not like Florida State. I'm a Gator fan. Florida State, they have their new coach is Willie Taggart. I actually think he'll do good things there. Unfortunately, um, their quarterbacks, both of them suck. And I know people, anybody watching, you're a Gator fan. I mean, the guy they came into the season with last year, he got hurt in the first game, which isn't good. Um, the year before, he had solid numbers. DeAndre Francois, he wasn't great. The backup who came in, James Blackman, was terrible. Uh, and I watched them. Yes, I'm a Gator fan, but as she mentioned earlier, I watch pretty much every game I possibly can.
yeah.
I read all the magazines. I could show you the magazines I have. I read every single game recap of all the games and the stats. I watch them play every time, even though I don't like FSU. I watch them in hopes that they lose. I do not think either one of their quarterbacks are very good.
And
That, as a Gator fan, we have had terrible quarterbacks since Tim Tebow has left. And I would probably rather DeAndre Francois as my quarterback as a Gator compared to what we've had. Because what we've had is shit. He's a little bit above shit. James Blackman, I would not recruit him. He is shit. He's the backup that came in when DeAndre got hurt last year. So you have two quarterbacks that can start and not be very good. I don't care how much if an FSU fan is watching this, you hate it. The stats look good. I watched them play. They do not look good.
I will say this, even though he does not like Florida State, if they are legitimately doing well, he will give them props.
Yeah.
If they're doing well, but as
When Jameis Winston was there, he was good there. One of the seasons. The next season he wasn't very. He kind of fell off. But his Heisman year, sure, he was great. But that being said, I have to pick this game.
Virginia Tech versus Florida State, just to recap.
Virginia Tech normally has one of the best defenses in the country. Their defensive coordinator, Bud Foster, he's been their defensive coordinator for like 25 years. He he's been their defensive coordinator longer than almost every school has had their head coach, other than that Bill Snyder guy at Kansas State that I ranted about earlier. Um, I'm trying to look. I'm looking at Virginia Tech's quarterback and stuff to see if it triggers a memory because I think they're Josh Jackson. He was a freshman last year. He actually had a good year. Passed for 2,900 yards, over 20 touchdowns. He's good. Um, they're usually a solid running team. Um, I'm as much as I don't like FSU. I think this game will be even. I'm gonna go with Virginia Tech. I can't pick FSU. That could go either way. It's a coin flip. It could come down to a last second field goal.
So that is who we have picked throughout for all the college football games. It's going to be within from next Thursday through next Monday, basically. So hopefully you enjoyed. I think I can say my brother does have a wealth of knowledge. With what you know right now, who do you think is going to go to the, I was going to say Super Bowl, It's not Super Bowl. He gets on to me all the time because I say Super Bowl, but the national championship. Can't get it right. I'm just gonna say Super Bowl.
I can't go against Alabama.
So
They have the best coach. They have the best talent. They have both. They have two starting quarterbacks that both they can win a national title with, which they did last year. Put it this way: they had a quarterback, Jalen Hurts. He started all season. He started the first half of the national championship game, and they were down 20-6. The second half, they put in Tua Tagovailoa, he was a true freshman. He brought him back and won 26-23 in overtime. He hit the winning touchdown pass in overtime on a 41-yard touchdown pass. So they put whoever quarterback in and they win championships. I can't go against Alabama.
as of week 1, national championship,
Alabama.
Richie thinks Alabama. So thank you for listening. Please leave comments. Please subscribe. So this is our first YouTube channel I have my own YouTube channel, but our first YouTube channel actually talking to other people. So subscribe, give comments, and if you have any questions or any tidbits, just
if you know more stuff, let me know. I know I've left out some people. I actually just we were talking about Virginia Tech, their running back Trevon McMillan, he transferred to Colorado, so he's going to be the Colorado running back this year. I mentioned earlier about they had a transfer from Virginia Tech. I forgot his name until now, so maybe you can edit that together.
I might just leave it. But yeah, so we'll see you next week.